kinds of stories and there's all kinds of story applications. So I never walk into an organization or a client assuming that I know what the answer is until I hear the request. Sometimes and everyone thinks they're looking for a story, but in fact it might be something very different in the way that story is brought to the situation. So I got a phone call from the head of a leading architectural firm in our area saying, "I'm not sure why I'm calling you, but I think I need help telling my story." This firm had been working at the mid-level and had pitched several successful proposals and felt ready to enter a bigger league, but didn't know if their story was strong enough to take them there. They brought me in to work with the design team. They had been putting together a proposal of slides of the chronology of the major projects they had done and were ready to pitch it on Friday. It was Monday. I looked at it and I said, "It's a boring story." We actually threw it all up in the air and created a storyline that looked at what are the elements and skills that they do best that could come together to, in fact, fulfill the vision of the client. We took all of those slides, rearranged them into a very different story about this is what we do well. These are the moments we've done it well before, that looked at space, at light, at meeting areas, at felt sense of space, and created a powerful story that in the end actually led them to be at the top of their game and a finalist where they were competing with some of the world's leading architectural firms. In another client situation, there was a very small, innovative technology company that was about to merge with a very large, renowned company. And their concern was that they were going to lose their own culture, their own sense of what differentiated them as they began to integrate into the larger organization. So we did a lot of work about their identity story, what made them unique, what parts of their story they wanted to make sure the larger company understood and perhaps even made room for, so that the value of what they brought, in fact, wouldn't be lost in the merger. The same work had to happen actually in reverse of understanding the larger company's culture, what they valued, why they wanted the smaller company, and how to bring the two together so that together they had something more than what either had before. And that was the goal of, in fact, a new vision there. Sometimes the goal of story is, in fact, more about the teller than the story, about leadership presence, about people understanding who I am and what I'm about in a different kind of way, so that we can bring ourselves together towards a new vision to create a new story together, but they need to know who I am in my story before we can even work on that. So it's finding the backstory to support one where they are now before they move forward into a new place. We were working with a large medical center that was trying to bring their leadership together in a new way to reground themselves really in their mission and their vision and be clear in the direction that they were headed. We set up a leadership retreat where we brought in a group of patients and allowed the doctors and the administrators to hear the patient experience. We had a group of nurses later sharing their story of what it was like to work in the various departments under the various doctors. We had the administrative staff also share their stories so that we were gathering stories from all levels of the organization. Additionally, we've done some pre-work where we brought in a video camera and interviewed for the stories of those at all levels of the organization, beginning in the cafeteria and the parking garage, of what was the experience working in this hospital. Why did they choose to be here? Many of them had been there for 30 or 40 years, and their stories had never been heard by the CEO or the doctor level of the organization. What was touching was one of the stories of the cafeteria workers who said that they were the ones who every day greeted the patients coming through lines, seeing them in various stages of health or failing, that they become close to them and that they are sort of the daily normal contact. There was a heart-wrenching story of a cafeteria worker realizing one day that a favorite patient was no longer coming through the line. But in fact, about a week later, this patient's mother came directly to her saying, "I want to let you know that my daughter passed away, but wanted to say goodbye to you and was sorry that she couldn't. But your presence here has made such the difference for her in her experience here in this hospital." it gave a chance for all levels of workers in that hospital both to take pride in the team that they were a part of, but also to value the complex organization that they were and the importance of every member of that team from the bottom to the top. The experience at the end of this gathering of having shared and heard the stories of their coworkers, beginning with the journey of who I am and how I happen to be in this job to why I continue to show up daily and do the work I do, changed everyone's connection to the mission and the vision, reinvigorating people in their work. In fact, at the end of the workshop, one nurse came and said, I was on the verge of leaving, but I reconnect and I recommit to being here now. This organization is moving in a direction that I want to be part of. One of the powers of story is that it can work amongst diverse people of multiple generations, backgrounds, perspectives, and be a means of bringing people together. One of the places I've come to use story is in legacy work. I've been brought in by philanthropical institutions to work with multiple generations of one family who are all trying to get to a common vision of where we want within our common value place to be known, where we're going to essentially make our mark by how we distribute our money. One of the issues is that everyone enters the room with their own story and seeing that as separate, different than others. One of the jobs is to help people both hear each other's stories, but find a common underlying story that in fact they all have in common around a shared value that allows them to move out of where they're different, where they're separate, and join together to create a common story that can hold and carry them all forward.